Hello, everyone. Suzanne Taylor King here for the Productive and Prosperous Entrepreneur Coffee Chat. And we are here today with the incredibly stylish JD Gershbein. Welcome, my friend.
Aren't you nice? Here I'm showing up in a white t-shirt, but
That's
underneath a very
okay.
stylish shawl-collared cardigan, I might add.
Yeah. You're looking very owlish this
Well,
morning.
if I'm going to go out there and call myself the LinkedIn style guide, I better back it up.
Agreed. And I'm really excited for a little sneak peek into what makes JD feel productive and prosperous in his business. We've been connected a long time. I'm not sure how we originally met on LinkedIn, but we got connected. And very quickly, I realized something uniquely different about the way JD does LinkedIn. Not only is he stylish and professional, but there was something really magical about the way you've crafted your presence on LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan because of the organic nature of what you do. And I'd love for you to let our listeners know what makes you feel productive as an entrepreneur, and how does that affect how you show up on any social media platform? But I know LinkedIn is your one of choice.
Sure, two of my favorite words, productivity and prosperity. And how do we approximate those feelings? How do we
Mm.
approach that state of being productive and being prosperous? And it's difficult to quantify, I have to say. You and I met in the early stages of the pandemic at a time when we were all forced into the online world. We were reevaluating ourselves, strong self-assessment, taking stock of the people who comprised our LinkedIn community. And I was doing that full time. There were no distractions for me. I've always been a resident of the platform. I call myself a user practitioner since 2006. So I'm coming up on around 100,000 hours on the site as we sit here and tape. And I've learned a few things. Uh, to, to discuss my own productivity, I'm always working. I use LinkedIn as a seamless interface. So
Mhm.
even when I'm in my periods of downtime, there's something humming beneath the surface for me on this platform, and I can always access it. And I can always implement and execute on the fly. I'm heavily improvised. As some of the folks might know, I've been a student of improv and sketch comedy for many years, and I'm now advancing improv as a very valuable cognitive framework in LinkedIn. So when I feel my most productive, I'm writing, I'm engaging with people who I hope to serve. I'm running and maneuvering through communities where I meet great people, quality organizers, people with vision. That keeps me productive, and the prosperity piece follows. I try to do the best work I can. I'm fallible. We're all fallible in professional development, and it's just, for me, a question of alignment and fit. Am I
Mm.
aligned with people? Are we a good fit to work together? This is what I constantly explore. When it happens, it's great. If not, we're friends, we're connections. Maybe there's a mentor-mentee relationship there. I learn from people. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm constantly eyes on, not just on LinkedIn, but everywhere in everything I do. So just mindset. Have you
Mm.
talked about mindset with anyone before on your program,
Oh
Suzanne?
yeah, all
I
the
think
time,
it comes down
all
to
the time.
that, the prosperity and the
Yeah.
productivity mindset.
I do. I feel like so much of what we do as entrepreneurs, whether we're showing up, with a brick and mortar store, or whether our things are more online, I don't think it really matters. I think it's that meeting people, expanding your connections, um, and for me, it's all about that organic piece that you talked about. Um, I don't do any paid advertising at this point for my business, and I've been in the online space for 14 years, and I've never needed to do that. I think that's what makes me feel productive. When I look at a business model of anybody's, whether it's my own or a client or a connection of mine, if it depends on paid advertising, to me, what if money stops coming in and you still have all this money going out for advertising? That was always my big concern when I first started out. Um, and I also want to touch on something that you said about being, around from the beginning of LinkedIn as a platform, as it's changed and grown and expanded over the last couple years in particular. I'm wondering what you see as the biggest change that's happened since the pandemic.
Wow, the biggest change on
Yeah.
a path of relentless change that
Mhm.
this platform is on, and I believe that the biggest change is how it has really bellied up to the human condition, and it's really holding up a mirror to our strengths, our weaknesses, our concerns, our anxieties, our issues, and it's become a place where professionals are truly building community. And that's been the greatest change. It kept people very aloof for a long time because of its gravitas and its
Mhm.
political correctness, and you had to be this way to be on LinkedIn. It was a social networking site for business, and the business conversation has some particular irregularities in communication that we can't put a handle on, and social media seemed to artificialize the process for a lot of people, and they couldn't wrap around it. But the pandemic the onset of the pandemic was really the inflection point for LinkedIn because it drove everybody into the online world. And people who had never leaned into LinkedIn before were suddenly taking notice, and they were tinkering with their profiles, and they were reevaluating the people that they brought into their networks. And I think that the collective paradigm shift, the mindset shift has thrust LinkedIn into a new light. And to its credit, it has withstood a lot of the crap that has befallen the other platforms to become
Mm.
king of the heap in social media.
Agreed. And I don't I think when I started on social media, I started on Facebook, and I had a lot of success on that platform. And it wasn't until about 2.5 years ago. I've always had a LinkedIn profile, but I really started to look at what I was missing on the platform
Mhm.
and what it could do for me that other platforms couldn't. And that
Yeah.
was really attractive to me as an not only as a coach, most of my ideal clients are on LinkedIn, my referral partners are definitely on LinkedIn, and I felt as though it was kind of the next phase of the development of my business was to have a better profile and a better presence on the most professional platform.
You see, Dorothy, you've had the power to go back to Kansas all along.
I know, right?
It's always been there for you.
Yes.
And a lot of people really woke up and smelled the coffee, and it took a global health crisis to do so.
Mhm.
And I've re-engineered my entire professional community on LinkedIn. And what I mean by that is it taught me how to engage a little bit better. It gave me an identity in the business universe that really before I discovered the platform, I didn't have. I was meandering around in business as just another marketer trying to find a client.
Mm.
And it was at the headwaters of the Great Recession, and I didn't know where my next piece of business was coming from. And I was going to networking events where pretty much 70 to 80% of the attendees were eliminated or downsized, and they were looking for new jobs. And
Yeah.
LinkedIn was really more of a job seeker platform. So what I was able to do, and as we're talking about this path of change, nobody was talking about business development on LinkedIn in 2007. It was going up against the career.coms and the monster.coms for people who were looking for new gigs. But at the same time, there were salespeople, sales
Mhm.
leaders who tried to train their teams. You had executives who were starting to consider their stories as a piece of their marketing arsenal. And you had a lot of people that were just on LinkedIn, very casual, created the profile, not doing much with it, just kind of
Mhm.
laying back, not posting much. I mean, perhaps that arguably is the biggest change on LinkedIn. It's just the volume of content that streams across the homepage in any given second. So this liberation of our creativity, this outflow, just getting our thoughts out there into the ether, that has what has driven productivity and product and prosperity. How we measure ourselves against what others seem to be doing, but yet differentiating, positioning, individuating,
Mhm.
becoming our own person on LinkedIn. That's what I did. And there was nobody around to guide me or teach me. I did it all myself. I was alone in the wilderness, Suzanne. I
Yeah.
didn't know what this thing was, and I just kept talking to people about it and getting their feedback, and my worldview on this thing grew, and my perspective honed, and I just do things differently. I surprise people with some of the things that I discuss
Mhm.
because I don't want to be lumped into that same category with these self-declaring LinkedIn experts who espouse lead generation
Right.
or thought leadership.
Mhm.
These are vague terms, and people want what's real now, don't you think, on a
I
site like
think so.
LinkedIn? The
I think
honeymoon's
so.
over.
Yeah. I feel as though, um, I in the online space, no matter what social media platform you're on, I really feel like the consumer, my ideal client, your ideal client, anyone's ideal client, is so conditioned to be spammed, to be sold to aggressively, connecting with someone, and then all of a sudden you're getting emails from that person. I never agreed to those emails. It's so prolific in the online space that by
That's where
not,
people think LinkedIn has evolved to. They think that it is
yeah,
that corner now where you're supposed to sell, and
mhm,
LinkedIn is not a license to sell.
yeah,
That's the art and the science of all of this, is how do you
mhm.
sell without selling?
Well, I
Rhetorical
think
question, Suzanne, but I know you're gonna tackle it.
no, I think that's the magical piece of attraction marketing. I've been talking about attraction marketing for at least 10 years, and what we're talking about here is having something of value, being a thought leader without calling yourself a thought leader, right? That's stepping into your own originality, your own category, your own um, independence in the space. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of coaches in the space. I think I'm connected to 1,500 coaches on LinkedIn because I run an event for coaches. Now, how do I stand out? Well, number one for me, and I think this is number one for you, you don't do the spammy thing. You don't chase clients or chase the DMs or, aggressive marketing tactics. It's that attraction piece by attracting people to you by what you say, the value you provide, or the events that you put on. You attract people to you and they genuinely get to know you, and then the trust goes through the roof, and then it's about having a conversation, and if somebody needs what I offer, I hear it in that conversation, and it's up to me to say, "Would you like to hear about what I could do for you?" And I think attraction marketing, it can be the hardest thing to master for people. And I'll be the first one to say that when I came into the online space, I actually thought I was going to post on Facebook or Instagram or wherever I was at the time. I was going to make a post and it was going to be so well worded that somebody would click on it and buy something from me.
Yeah.
And
In a
when that
perfect world, maybe.
oh, well, it never happened.
Right.
And, I remember being for years, just trying the same thing over and over and over and over, thinking, "Everybody says this works," and it doesn't. And
Yeah.
I
I
I I think it was such a learning curve for me in the
I
beginning.
I think we have to kind of find our vibe on LinkedIn, and that's
Mhm.
really how I teach, write, and speak these days, because the proliferation of redundant derivative material out there in the LinkedIn trade, and I've watched the trade, I've studied the trade, and as an industry figure, I want to make sure that my position is unique
Mhm.
within the trade. So in the early days, there was no other content to compare myself to. I was kind of writing the playbook. And now there is no playbook. The playbook has been abandoned. We're all writing our own playbooks. And I
Yeah.
think that's where I like to think I bring the value, is in helping people flesh out their narrative, help them superimpose themselves on this platform, which is open to everybody. What we do with it that really drives our outcomes,
Mhm.
but to help them acculturate into the online world, which many people have difficulty doing. That's really the hardest part. And the biggest piece of the biggest change is getting people to just activate and mobilize and do this in the online world. They've been very gun shy because of privacy and security concerns, but now they're active, they're participating, they're engaged, they want to achieve, and that has been the biggest driver of what's going on the platform right now. So that's where I teach. I teach people to find their place in the online world. That's a difficult and challenging proposition. LinkedIn has increased in complexity as our networks have built. Each person we take on, each person we remove from our networks, reshuffles the deck, changes the algorithm. So we're always communicating to different people, even though it might be the same people that like and comment or repost our work. But that's where the challenge lies, is making this thing your own. That's what I did from square one. But it took me, say 17 years to realize it.
Mm.
And that's what I'm bringing these days in terms of this next frontier I talk about, because you're never really going to settle the frontier. There's always one behind it, and one behind that, and one behind that. And this stuff is still in beta. It's going to be
Truly.
who knows where 50, 75, 100 years after we're off the earth. So you teach people, you leave a little bit of legacy in the process, and you become part of the history, part of the chronology, the timeline.
Yeah. Agreed. I think, you know, for my clients who tend to be a little shy about the online space in general, whether it's being polarizing, really putting your true beliefs out there, that was a big learning curve for me personally, and I notice it is with my clients. uh and because I had to do that myself,
Mhm,
I think you actually, can serve your ideal client so much better because you've done it for yourself.
mhm.
And what I think the cool part is when you're ready to really step into attracting people to you through value, through service, when you're really ready to step into that, you actually want to repel the people who are not a good fit. So by staying bold and vulnerable and open, you can actually create content that attracts your ideal client and repels those ones who you don't like and or who aren't a good fit for you.
That's tribal seeking behavior.
Mhm.
And that's how we're moving from this
Yeah.
static concept of a network to a more dynamic community of living,
Mhm.
breathing people,
Yes.
and into a audience, and then into a tribe. And
Yes.
the tribe is where your localized influence begins to spread. You can't achieve market domination without first dominating your own sphere of influence. And creating that sphere of influence, those COIs, those referral networks. That's important work. That's at
Mhm.
the crux of what I do these days, especially with advisors. And that is challenging. And that is time consuming, and that's where the input has to be. And unfortunately, as we all know, Suzanne
Mhm.
Taylor King, there's a lot of distractions bombarding us on a daily
Yeah.
basis, a lot of stuff that we have to do. And LinkedIn is looked at as a secondary or tertiary piece, and it shouldn't be. I'm not
Mhm.
really sure there's anything in business development that, when executed properly, can work as well as LinkedIn.
I think I agree with you. Just looking at the changes that have happened for me in the last 2 years since the pandemic, um, spending obviously less time out of the house
Yep.
and looking for, before the pandemic, lots of networking events, lots of in person, from small groups to chambers to traveling an hour or two to meet another group.
Hmm.
And now that's all it was accessible online before, but now it's even greater. And it's greater to the extent where there's actually more quality groups that you can get connected with online. I mean, besides just mine, there's other amazing groups. And I think when you really look at the power of LinkedIn events combined with networking groups, combined with a platform to actually build a network within, it becomes a really unique place, unlike any other social media platform.
Yeah.
And for any of our listeners who are a little intimidated with the publishing content or interacting with people, I always give this advice. If LinkedIn was a party and you were invited to it, what would you say? How would you connect with people? How
Mhm.
would you show up? And I think if you look at it from that standpoint of how can I show up not only with more style, but with more value, and I think you can really meet some incredible people and actually take that relationship and, like my friend Daniel Andrews says, make them real connections. People who are go from meeting you on LinkedIn to actually having your phone number, your address, and your birthday in their phone. And when they want to talk to you, they call you. And
Let's
that's a
cycle
really
back to what you were speaking about productivity and prosperity in terms of how we've been maneuvering about the virtual world and going to meetups. And
Mhm,
in the early stages of the pandemic, when we were so thirsty for human connection, it had been
mhm,
stripped away from us. We were confined
mhm.
to our fishbowl homes here, and the technology was much worse. That's another byproduct of all of this, is that we've all upgraded our home technology, and we look better online these days,
Yeah.
as opposed to being shadowed or half out of frame, or cameras that are positioned to look up our nostrils. I mean, everybody kind of wisened up to the fact that, okay, these are business meetings, and I have to look my best and
Yeah,
put that
like
foot forward. Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
yeah.
we saw the advent of the Zoom coach. I mean, we hadn't seen that before 2020. So
Uh-huh.
I think that we've become more productive in how we meet people, and how we've kind of reimagined the networking process.
Mhm.
And I'm no different. I was a prolific, voracious networker. And as a public speaker, I use that as a nice fulcrum to
Mhm.
network in a lively way at the events that I was speaking at, but also as I was cultivating relationships like anyone else, going to
Yeah.
a lot. And I live in Chicago, and there's events every night. You could have your weeks and months filled with cool events, and I met a lot of folks. But then you have the vagaries of the commute, dealing with traffic, dealing with people's schedules. More than on one occasion, I've been on the train ride into Chicago, which is about an hour, halfway in for my 7:30, 8 o'clock a.m. breakfast, and someone has to cancel. So now I'm hung out to dry for a few hours downtown. I got to go find a place to work. Fortunately, I had one. But at the same time, when you put all of the crap you had to put up with to meet people face to face, to this ability now to meet
Yeah.
dozens, if not hundreds of people in a week.
Mhm.
And that's how I re-engineered my network. The people that I was meeting, this is a beautiful study in um, uh, prime primacy recency event. That's what I was trying to pull out there. The people that you're meeting now are displacing the ones that you've met. I wasn't losing relationships.
Mm.
I was making better relationships
Mhm.
with people I was meeting through this common experience of a pandemic. The primacy had displaced everything else. These people
Yeah.
were here. I could see them. I could meet with them from the comfort of my own home and forging an ass groove on my sofa. And it just, every day I became more productive doing that. I was
Mhm.
putting new, cool people into my community. I was having more meaningful conversations. I was developing those conversations into touch points, into sales dialogues. And yes, obviously, we're all in business. If you're an advisor, if you're a transitional executive looking for a new gig, whatever the transaction is at the other end, there's a relational component that must be met. And I was meeting the relational component. I was taking the
Yes.
meetings. I never rescheduled anything. These meetings stuck, and I noticed that the meetings people were scheduling with me stuck. So we were webcam to webcam,
Mhm.
brain to brain, helping each other sort it out, how's the family, checking in, all of the personal humanistic stuff. But again, I'm in a field where I could truly help people navigate a pandemic, because
Mhm.
the online world was new to them. LinkedIn was new to them. And I happen to have a few tricks I could impart.
Yeah. Well, I think what so many people are fascinated with is that ability to go to a virtual either networking event or be involved with a community like the Idea Lab that I created, um, to be able to take and be involved in something for yourself, whether it's a networking group, a community, even a book club online,
Hmm.
whatever it is, to be involved with those people, turn those people into real connections, and real relationships. And even though there's so many of those people who I've never met in person, I truly feel that I have real relationships. It's not some disconnected online thing. I feel
Yeah.
really connected to the people that I've met in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'll throw you this term out there. We tend to form parasocial relationships with
Mhm.
people, I'll throw a little business psychology at you. And that's how we feel when we follow celebrities on Twitter. We
Yeah.
feel that we get to know them through their accounts, even though there's no snowball's chance in hell that we're ever going to know them on a friendship or meaningful level. But we get to know them through their tweets, through their
Mhm.
social media expression. And the same way, on an even grander scale, with the people that we've met really since the pandemic, where we've opened up more. Uh, I
Mhm.
mean, we have really put out our vulnerabilities, our frailties. It's been a very cathartic time for a lot of people, and they feel a little bit more autonomous in the way that they
Yeah.
express themselves. So we've been privy to that. We've accelerated the relationship cycle, so to speak, and that,
Mhm.
I think, is what's allowed me to truly speak about network to community as a mindset, is that
Mhm.
these people are no longer just names and thumbnails on a page
Yes.
on my LinkedIn feed. They are truly people whose goals and aspirations and dreams are as strong as mine. They want to achieve, they're trying their best, they they're doing what they feel is right, and again, superimposing themselves on a system where everybody gets a chance to be themselves. And
Yeah.
there is no main guru. There is no definitive field guide. It's what is important to you. If you're going to go more personal, go more personal. There's a downside to that. If you're going to be extremely professional, kind of teachy preachy, kind of a you should type of person,
Mhm.
then be that person. You're going to attract a certain amount of people who really need that type of development. But the key is to be the genuine article.
Mhm.
You notice I'm using genuine article now instead of authenticity, Suzanne Taylor King, because
Yes,
authenticity is now a buzzword. And I'm
I
retired.
I know.
So many people are using it. I'm the genuine article.
Yes.
That's what I try to implore others to be. Because if you're going outside yourself a little too much, if you're contriving your communications, if the
Mhm.
content doesn't seem real, and we can talk about what Chat GPT is going to wind up doing to content moving forward in the 2020s. It's again, it's human intellect, human emotion, human
Mhm.
viscera. What's from inside? What's spilling out? What's coming out? And can that convert to business or career advancement?
I I mean, I think yes. I think it's easily transferable to the online space when done with that genuine connection,
Hmm.
and the go giver, mindset behind it. And I think where I'd like to really tie this in is to explain the difference between casually putting content out there and actually creating a community around
Right.
your content. You know, eh, I'm all about community, about bringing people together, whether it's in real life or on Zoom. And I think one of the keys, and many people miss this, is being available, being being there for people when they have questions
Hmm.
or they reach out to you, being receptive
Hmm.
and available, I think. And social media has actually allowed us to do that. You and I are both old enough to remember the days when you were waiting for a phone call from someone and you couldn't leave the house because you were waiting for a phone call from someone.
Yeah,
And
sometimes the cable guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The phone was
sure,
attached to the wall on a cord. So I couldn't really go anywhere.
sure.
And I think social media has changed so much of that. And it's only through the appreciation that we get to do it on the fly, on the go, be accessible. Um, I think it's really shifted the way
Yeah.
business
Well,
looks.
it ties in with your productivity prosperity concept.
Mhm.
Mean, I don't make we don't make a move without this right now, and
Right.
we get our information in very time sensitive fashion these days. I
Mhm.
believe there's an incredible time sensitivity to pretty much anything I'm receiving, and we triage these experiences as they
Yes.
come in. So we have to make sure that the important stuff doesn't slip through the cracks. And it's easy. We're in a distraction rich environment right now. We move from thing to thing. And if you're like me, a solopreneur, toiling in isolation for the most part during the course of a day, unless I have meetings, then you try to prioritize as best you can.
Mhm.
I don't have any productivity hacks for that. I'm not a productivity specialist. I only know what works for me. And like anybody else, I've let a few opportunities probably go by the wayside because I haven't executed on them in timely fashion. But the real important stuff, what I'm trying to navigate, that is front and center at all times. It's nurtured, it's filed correctly, it's accessible, it's retrievable, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And to your point about communication and building community through content, I believe that there is a proportional relationship between content and community, which I'm establishing in my writings and teachings, that content builds community. And
Mhm.
through community, you elevate your profile through content. So they are inexorably linked, pun
Yes.
intended, to each other because that's the framework within LinkedIn. Everything LinkedIn is doing now is set up to support content creators and community builders. And if you're involved in one or both of those activities, first of all, kudos to you, because that is going to really secure your future in
Yeah.
coming years. But that's where we're heading with all of this. And LinkedIn is the driver, it's the catalyst, and it's creating the biggest FOMO of all if you're not represented well on the platform, if the profile doesn't speak to your capabilities and core values, and
Yeah.
if the content you're providing is missing the target, because a lot of folks are missing the target with content. It's tragic what I'm seeing out there on the homepage right now. And I'm not leading a crusade to correct it. Well, maybe I am, but I'm certainly leading a crusade with the people that I serve, my clients, my students, my
Mhm.
mentors, my proteges, anybody that wants to gain a little bit of perspective on really how to truly manage LinkedIn in a very difficult environment, in a very uncertain, volatile environment. I'm
Yeah.
happy to have that conversation.
I love it. I love it. Well, I love the value behind it, and I love the idea of the content that I curate in my feed, the content I provide, the content that I interact with
Mhm.
is actually what's driving my community. I am literally a living, breathing example of what you're talking about. And I know so many people that are doing exactly the same.
Mhm.
Their content is driving a community of people
Mhm.
to rally around them
Yeah,
to
they're micro communities.
yeah,
That's the whole micro community model, where you're seeing you have the community at large, and we're not privy to the community at large. You can't know what 840 million people are doing on LinkedIn, but you
right,
can certainly know what a nice swath of your network is doing. And
right,
now we're seeing all these micro communities build and start to overlap. And I think that's the beauty of what LinkedIn is showing us as a sociological, anthropological, and psychological framework.
yeah.
It's really organizing and prioritizing people for us very, very well, even though there's not a true CRM system to speak of.
Right, right. I went to an event yesterday that I was invited to. I had never been to this event before. It's not a networking group per se, but I was invited by one of my new connections. And he said, international community, high level thinkers. I think it's the perfect fit for you. So I went, and in a room of 70 people, I knew the person who invited me
Hmm.
and one other. And here's the magical thing in that 70 people in a room, all there to meet new people across the world. So, global audience. And I knew two people in the room. That's an opportunity for me to look through that list of people and decide who's a good person to connect with, who's like, do I want to interact in this group in the future? Well, you have to decide who you hang out with, right?
Hmm.
Because it goes back to you are the sum of the five people you hang out with the most. And with that in mind, LinkedIn can give you powerful insights into who's in a room. And if you use it to that ability to
Yeah.
be able to look up someone and say, is this person somebody who I want in my community, in my circle? Is this somebody I can serve well, who I will get value from and be able to give value to? And there is no other social media platform that you can do
Hmm.
that with.
Yeah, it is really accelerated and compressed the
Mhm,
business development conversation, and how people really position themselves for opportunities. I think recognizing opportunities is difficult in general. And when you see what people are expressing on LinkedIn,
mhm.
and if you're in an event medium with them, then it becomes a little easier. The intuitive process kind of illuminates for you, and we're all intuitive beings.
Mhm.
And some are more intuitive than others on the social platforms. I've always had great intuitive power. I've always been able to recognize, or at least see, maybe find an in into a situation and inject myself very delicately into a situation or a conversation. I think that's a strength of mine, and it's a teachable skill, I believe.
Mhm.
And because there's so much unsaid, and there's so much verbal posturing that we can that we can do, and there's only so much we can do in an email.
Mhm.
So structuring our communications, our approaches, our follow-ups, and then kind of converging all of that into a potential sales moment, that's at the core of the challenge.
Yeah. And I don't know if I would call it a challenge. For me, it's been more of a skill development, like a learning curve.
Mhm,
Um, Turning a like or a follow into an actual connection. That's what's required for me
mhm.
to have clients, because I believe that coaching is custom and it's created through conversation. So if I believe that, then how do I take a like or a follow and turn that person into an actual connection, if it makes
Yeah,
sense? And LinkedIn actually allows me to look at that person's profile. If their profile is done well, even if it's done mediocre, I can tell a lot. Um, and it determines for me whether or not I'm going to turn that person into an actual connection and a community member, or whether they could just like and follow me all day long.
and to your
Um,
point, there's something to be said for really tending to that profile on the level where you do make yourself appealing uh,
mhm.
to community builders, because that's what's going to drive all of the decision making on
Yes.
us. And it all comes back to me in any engagement I do. It all comes down to profile.
Yeah.
I've worked with people who are incredibly tech savvy, who know the medium far better than I do from a tech coding algorithmic standpoint.
Mhm.
Algorithm is very difficult to explain to people. I think there are people on Cubicle Row on LinkedIn that really aren't too hip on the algorithm right now
Yeah.
in terms of how to explain it to people.
Yeah.
But but again, that profile serves as really uh, that that vehicle that
Mhm.
gets you into places, that fuels the decision making, that really kind of gets into the highest intellectual and emotional levels of the brain, what we would call the personal brand centers of the brain,
Yes.
and takes over. And I firmly believe, I've believed it since I discovered LinkedIn, that people can be impulse buys,
Mm.
that we can be positioned for great opportunities, business or career, just on the how we look on this page. And
It's not the truth.
who would have thought that back in, say, the mid to late 1990s, when email was a thing and
Mhm.
coming to prominence? But now we don't make a move, many of us, without looking at someone on LinkedIn first.
Well, it's very true.
We're
I mean,
positive.
my first community, 1992, no social media,
Mhm.
nowhere to look up people.
Yeah.
There wasn't really a Google. I mean, I could go to the library and open up an encyclopedia, but most likely the people I was looking for weren't there. Um, and I remember unconsciously creating my first community around running some ski and snowboard trips. And it was so organic. I just happened to mention to three or four people, hey, I'm thinking about, taking a group of people to Innsbruck, Austria and snowboarding for a week. You want to go? And all of a sudden, I had 30 people who wanted to go. And those 30 people became 100 and some people on a spreadsheet with their phone number, no email. And they were real connections. They were people who If I called them, they answered the phone because it was me calling.
Yeah.
And I would literally just call and say, next trip is 6 months and we're going to Chile and we're going to snowboard and surf in the same day. And it was either a yes or a
Wow,
no.
where do I sign up for that? That sounds
I know,
pretty
it was
cool.
amazing. It was amazing.
That's
Um,
that sure beats the old rubber chicken tour that you get on
that's
most
right.
network events, you know?
That's right. Um, and that community became one, a huge income driver.
Yeah.
They were my business's advocates, if you will, which is a hot new buzzword, advocates, right?
Advocacy
And
is big. I like it. I'm using it very liberally these days.
yeah,
Sure.
and it was so much fun. One, because it was organic and I
Mhm.
actually knew the people.
Mhm.
And then having those people tell other people
Yeah.
who told other people, and it spread
Yeah.
like this amazing spider web. And I see the same thing happening on social media now for me and for you and for people that we know and that we're connected to.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely incredible to
Yeah.
fuel that growth with that actual being connected go giver mindset, I
Yeah.
think is huge. So,
Yeah, and I think you've hit on it. The more we support others, the more that support comes back to us. I believe
yes.
in that. The universal law of
Yeah.
reciprocity. I think the universe does provide a bit of a buzzword in and of itself too, but um, and that leads to being again productive and prosperous. If you're willing to invest in this, in anything,
Mhm.
it's almost impossible to not get a return at this level.
Exactly.
And that's why when folks ask me, and it's still one of the most frequently asked questions that I do receive in seminars or workshops or talks is how much time should one realistically spend
Mm,
doing LinkedIn? I don't really have a great answer for that. And it typically will drip down into the same stock response of, well, you get to the point where you invest a lot of time and a lot of energy in learning the site as you would with anything, and
mhm.
then you've paid for the leverage of being able to do it on a more
Yeah.
limited or more effective basis where your time expenditure may not be as great. It's very much like initiating at a health club where you'll pay fees, strong
Yes.
fees up front for the privilege of paying a nominal fee for the remainder of your life. And I
Mhm.
think that's the same with any professional development training. You invest hard
Mhm.
financially, with your time, with your energy, little sacrifice for the
Mhm.
privilege of knowing where to go, knowing where the
Yeah.
stuff is. And human beings are excellent cognitive mappers. It just takes a little practice and a little repetition, and you've got it down. I mean, LinkedIn isn't going to get away from you if you're only doing it,
Right.
once a week or something. But it's like a language; it's a use it or lose it type of thing.
Very true.
So
Very true.
that's how you stay productive. That's how you gain prosperity is to your point, keeping important relationships in front of you.
Mhm.
That's what I do. I don't cold approach anyone. Everything comes to me through my own organic experience. I design my experiences and it works for me.
Mhm. Well, I would say that's the most common question I get, from my clients as well. It's they think I'm everywhere all the time, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, um, even Twitter. And it's a
And
great
on StreamYard too.
oh, now StreamYard too, yes. And
You're
YouTube,
here.
working on my YouTube channel. But it's really all an illusion. I'm not on those platforms every day interacting and sharing and doing. It's become a routine
Yeah.
now, and I have my dance that I do, my schedule that I follow, and it really has it started off with a big investment, just like getting back in shape starts a big investment, and then it's very easily manageable
Yeah.
now, 4 years into really growing my following and growing my community. So thank you
Nice.
for being one of those people for me. I appreciate you. And if anyone wants to get in touch with JD and see his magic, I highly, highly recommend the link
My alchemy, you mean?
your alchemy, your LinkedIn style guide. That's JD's newsletter here on LinkedIn, and you can find that right on his profile. And I will share the link to that in the comments of this video for you, my friend. And do you have anything special coming up you would like our listeners to know about?
Well, if people are watching this 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years from now, and I talk about an event coming up in a few weeks, it
Yeah,
will mean
that doesn't
nothing
work.
to them whatsoever.
Right.
You know, what do I have coming up? I have me coming up. I'm on Zooms every day with super cool people, learning about them. Uh, I'm a social scientist with an insatiable appetite for learning and an incurable curiosity. So find me if there's a fit. Review my profile, and I'm happy to be in a conversation with anybody that wants to be in a conversation with me.
Love it. Well, thank you, Shauna, for saying that JD and I are inspiring. You're so welcome. Thanks for being here today. Thanks to all of our listeners here at the Productive and Prosperous Entrepreneur Coffee Chat. Thank you, JD, for being here. Thank you for being a member of the Idea Lab community. And if you want to meet more incredible entrepreneurs, connect with me on LinkedIn and connect with the Idea Lab community through me. It's right on my page, right on my profile. And let's have a conversation about what community driven growth can do for you and your brand and your business. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Suzanne Taylor King. I look forward to seeing you and connecting with you on LinkedIn soon. Thanks, JD.
My pleasure. Thank you, Suzanne.
You're welcome.